Hi, would you tell me your name, please?
Sure. My name is Mark Oestmann, and the last name doesn't look like it's spelled. It's Oestmann, and not many people down here know how to pronounce it.
But you've told us all. We've picked up on that.
Everyone's picked up on it real well.
So tell me about your family.
Okay. I moved to Texas 45 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah, take that back, 47 this year, and went through a program the Army had. I ended up in the program quite by accident because I had planned to be a math teacher in the Midwest. I'm from Nebraska, and on a whim, the day after our homecoming, I took the Federal Service entrance exam for the federal government, and several months later, while I was student teaching, I got a notice that they wanted to interview me. And when I finished, I had 20 or so offers to teach math, one offer from the federal government, and they paid more.
Yeah, benefits were better.
It was. And I'd never been to Texas in my life, ever before. And
Was it at that point, after you graduated, that you moved to Texas?
Yes.
Okay.
It was. I graduated in May, moved to Texas in June.
Where did you go? Where did you go to school?
A little bitty college that is now closed and trying to reopen, called Turkey College, way up in northwest Missouri.
Oh, okay.
And like I said, I moved here, never having been here before, and I had a choice of about 10 places to go. And on a whim, I took Texas. They said, okay, you can come on down.
Okay, in 1972.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, long time ago.
Where'd you go? Where was your first assignment?
Okay, while I was here, my second assignment, and I had about 20 choices for it, was Corpus Christi, Texas. And it fell through while I was a student here, so they had to place me. And for a while, they had me going to Montana, and that fell through. And then I ended up in Pueblo, Colorado. And that's the beginning of the story of how I met my wife.
Okay.
Because the day before I left for Colorado, I met Sheila.
In college, where you were?
No, here.
Here?
Here in Texas. She's native Bowie County.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
okay.
you were here in Bowie County?
Yes.
And you met her here, okay.
And her sister lived across the street. She was babysitting. And I met her on true the day before I left. And so we hit it off and decided to write back and forth.
Yeah.
And after several months of that, I wrote her one last note and said, this isn't fair to you, I'm never coming back. Well, within a week from me telling her I was never coming back, I got an offer from the school asking me to come back as an instructor.
Oh, wow.
And I would have given anything to retract that letter. And so I wrote one more letter, not expecting anything. I said,
I take that back.
you're right. I just said, I want you to know I'm coming back. And she was waiting. I wouldn't say waiting, but she met me when I returned. And the rest is history.
Was she from Texarkana, or where was she?
No, she was from New Boston.
New Boston, okay.
And we lived in New Boston for the first several years of our marriage. We got married a couple years after that.
Yeah.
And in New Boston, we've lived in New Boston, Hooks, Texarkana, and I guess Red Lake one time, yeah.
So how long have y'all been married?
That was the 45 years part. I was thinking this year, this October, will be 45 years.
Well, congratulations. That's great. That's great.
Yeah, we've been hooked up for a while. And we have one son, Michael, and he's 43 years old this year, in October also. And he also, well, I'm going to back up in that story. We'll talk about his marriage in just a little bit.
Okay.
But when I first got here, I went to the other Lutheran church in town. You know, I was at that time ELCA background, actually ALC, which is the more conservative part of the ELCA.
Okay.
And they had a church in town and went there from that time, 72 all the way through 2000.
So is this the church that's on Robinson Road?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Where I can't even think of what's there now, but they replaced a drugstore. Yeah. CVS CVS is plopped on top of where it used to be. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's gone.
Okay, it's
Yeah.
gone.
Yeah, it's definitely gone. And several other members of this congregation were former members over there.
Yes.
Over the years, that congregation just kept getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And I have a niece, and we were real close to her and her children, and they were not getting Sunday school over there. And one day in line for Luby's, I met Pastor Cody.
How about that?
Yeah, and I asked him, if they had good Sunday school for children that age. And so we made the move based solely on the fact that we needed a Sunday school.
And who was your niece?
Becky Van.
Becky.
Yeah, and of course Dalton and Dylan were the two that we were looking for Sunday school. And they've always almost been like children to us, really close, and we kept them a lot. So we moved, I believe it was in January of 2000, we moved churches anyway, and it was like old home day. I mean, I knew quite a few people here, and I had been encouraged previously to, come on over and take a look,
Yeah.
by quite a few of the members, and so it really wasn't a big change. It was like, wow, I got a nice.
Well, we're surely glad that you came.
Well, I appreciate
And
the thought.
we missed the bands too.
Yes, and they've become kind of world travelers. That they're in Oklahoma now,
Oh, okay.
or I should say, Becky and Sam and Dylan are in Oklahoma at Fort Sill, I believe.
Okay.
And then, of course, Dalton joined the Army, and he's in North Carolina. And so they're split to the wind. And
Yes.
Sam's job now takes him everywhere in the world almost. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah, they would be here if they could come back, I think. So.
Well, we surely do miss them.
Oh, yeah, but the Sheila's background is Assembly of God, and of course, becoming a Lutheran, that was actually at the first church, that was quite an experience.
Yeah.
A lot of difference.
Yeah.
But, in the church service. Not so much in the beliefs as a lot of people think, but the service itself is totally, different, so.
Were they more solemn or
No.
much more
Assembly of God,
effusive?
Pentecostal,
Yeah.
raise your hands, hallelujah, even speaking in tongues and, all kinds of things. Of course, I went to church with her several times too.
Yeah.
And that was a brand new experience for
Yeah.
me.
Lutheran is a little bit more.
Stodgy? No.
I didn't say that.
Not really. No, I would say prim and proper.
Yes, that's a good thing to say. Prim and proper.
But no, we were actually married in her local church in Boston, married by her brother-in-law, who was a preacher in the Assembly of God church, and her oldest brother was my best man.
So the family was all together.
Oh, yeah,
for
we
that
kept
wedding.
it.
It was all in the family.
Kept it all in the family, sure did.
And you grew up as a Lutheran, but in a different branch.
Yes, yeah, it's ELCA. I've heard some of the people here call that ELCA. I'd never heard that name, for the acronym before.
Yeah.
Usually they spell it out, Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, or
Right.
ELCA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where in Nebraska was it?
Southeast Nebraska, about as far southeast as you can get, a little bitty town called Auburn.
Auburn.
Yeah, south of Omaha, 65 miles. And I have, my brother still lives in Auburn, and I have one sister in Omaha and one that lives in Lincoln. And that's my family back there.
So when you go to Nebraska, you have a lot of places to visit.
Yes, and I guess if I can add to that story, that leads to the second part, like I said, my son is 43. When we moved to this church, he was fresh out of college and well, he was still 23, but going on 24. And met his wife to be here. And they...
And his wife is, what was her name?
Shannon.
Yeah, Barth.
Barth. I couldn't think of that to save my life. And interestingly enough, Terry's brother was one of my students in the program where I taught at Red River.
Denny?
Yeah, Denny was
Oh, okay.
one of my, and you know, I made the connection right away there. But Michael and Shannon made a connection all the way across the church. We sat on one side, they sat as far on the other side, and from what my wife said, they were cutting eyes at each other for a long time before things got. But they of course, they met in church and dated for quite a while, and you know, she had a daughter, or has a daughter, and named Alexa. Okay, and of course Michael adopted her. And the reason I came back to it, well, they've been married now, let's see, they were married in 2003.
Okay.
And what is that, 16 years?
Yeah.
And Alexa, our granddaughter, has gone through college, finished, and she was looking for a job somewhere with the federal government. So I would send her things I would see from time to time, and I sent her one just kind of as a joke that was in Lincoln, Nebraska, and because she was born and raised Texan, and that cold-natured girl had never been anywhere near north there.
Oh, wow.
And she came to me one day and she says, "Papa, I want you to know," she said, "I applied for that job." I said, "Alexia, it's cold up there." She said, "No, that's exactly the job I want." I said, "Are you sure? I mean, it gets really cold up there." And then a couple of weeks passed, she says, "I have an interview for that job." I said, "Alexa, it gets cold up there." And it went on from there. And one day she called me and she says, "Papa, I got the job."
Yay. And that's where she is.
Yes, she's in Lincoln, Nebraska.
Wow.
Which is where one of my sisters lives. And my sister is her husband passed away several years back. And so Alexa lived with her in her basement for the first 2 months while she was there. And then eventually got an apartment.
Wow.
Yeah, but she works for, what is it, Citizenship and Immigration Services, Homeland Security.
Yeah.
And deep into that, and loves her job, and actually loves Lincoln, and endured one of the hardest winters they've had up there in years.
So,
she moved up
she's
there
happy there.
Oh yeah, she's happy.
Likes that cold.
Yeah, moved there in January of all things.
Of all times to
Right.
move there.
And it went negative quite a few times in her first month there. So, but
it's so much nicer probably in the summer and you know, in the fall.
I regularly send out weather broadcasts, and I said something about their high was going to be 80 the other day.
Yeah. Oh,
said,
wow.
Yeah, he came back and said, "I sure wish we could trade temperatures."
I have a friend in Bozeman, Montana, and we've been saying the same thing.
Oh yeah, they're probably a little chillier up that way.
What has been your involvement in church?
Well,
I mean, we've got a long list here, but I want it to be
I'll
said.
summarize it. Yeah, they saw me coming. No, I guess, or they were needing some help. But since I've been here, it's what, 19 years, I guess now, and I'm still a newcomer here. But
Not in my book.
Taught Sunday school for quite a few of those years.
High schoolers.
Yeah, I taught all the way down to first and second grade, and I was early on. I told them I would substitute. You know, anytime if you substitute, you're in.
You're
Yeah, I mean,
in.
but I taught, I think, pretty much the full range except for kindergartners.
Yeah.
And actually followed one class. I believe it was Dylan's class. You know, I kind of worked my
All the way
up
up
as
with
he,
them?
yeah. And then the last few years have been confirmation, teaching confirmation class, so pastor can teach the adult Bible class on Sunday mornings. But offices, I was an elder for quite a few years.
Yep. President of the congregation.
You know, president and
How many? Vice president.
yeah, I was vice president. Yeah, president, vice president. And there was some other. I think elders. You know, I was chairman of the board of elders
Yes.
for a lot of years, and of course that put me on the council. But you know, a lot of
Well, I tell you what, we appreciate your
enjoyable work.
service. We do appreciate your service. You're like a rock.
Oh well, I appreciate that thought too.
And you read. You also do read the epistle in church.
Yeah, I'm actually only a fill-in there now too.
Yeah,
But-
you do it regularly.
Yeah.
You're a regular fill-in.
Yeah, yeah. I told Pastor if somebody doesn't show up, I'll be a reader anytime, and that happens more than you might think.
Yeah, I watched the hesitation and seeing you get up.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
What are your first memories of this church?
I think the first memories are probably external, and I still describe the church that way. People ask where your church is, and I'll say it's the church with the three crosses out front. And if that doesn't key in, then I say the church with the unusual shaped roof. And if they know Texas Boulevard at all, they have figured out where our church is.
Or if anybody's been in an airplane, they
Yes.
should be able to figure it out.
They can see that it's in the shape of a cross from an airplane, and I've seen that many times. So, but that was inside. I mean outside. Inside, I think it was how welcoming the people were. You know, and you know, from the day we came, it was you know, we were always surrounded with people. How's everything going there? You know,
Yeah.
and
Made you feel
that was
at
nice.
home.
Oh, I did. I
Yeah.
felt right at home from the first day in.
What is a significant event that's happened since you've been here? Something you think is there anything that stands out?
Well, there's Michael and Shannon's wedding. I mean,
Yeah.
that was in 2003, of course.
Yeah.
The centennial year this year, I think, is very interesting. You know, I remember when I was a child, I celebrated our church's centennial back in Nebraska also.
Oh, really?
Oh,
As a
yeah.
child? So
Yeah.
so it's been at least 45 years
Yes.
since then. So they're
Well, and I was, well, yeah, I was probably, let me think, it was, I believe it was in, don't hold me to this, but I believe it was in 1967. And so it would have been 1867. That would have been
Wow, so-
23, 40, about 42 years ago.
yeah. So it's
They're-
on its way to 200.
Yeah, they're closed in on 150 right now, I think, so.
How is it settled? That church? How did people, immigrants?
Oh, yeah. If you want me to talk about that church.
I
now-
know I shouldn't, but I think
Well,
that would be interesting.
One expression I had not heard till I moved to this church was cradle Lutheran. And that, I don't know if that's unique to Missouri Synod, but it means you were a Lutheran
Yeah.
since you were born.
Yeah.
If they include me being a Lutheran in another synod too,
Yes.
I was a cradle Lutheran. And not only was I a cradle Lutheran, so was both sides of the family, but my father, my grandfather, my great-grandfather. The church that
Wow.
the church that I'm from, I have grandparents, all my grandparents are in the cemetery, which is right next door. On the Eastman side, they go back to my great-grandparent, and the corner tombstone are my great-great-grandparents. And of course, every grandparent of mine, or great-grandparent of mine, came from Germany. And that's, when you think about it, that's 8 grandparents. And my mom and dad met in church too.
So
They-
now it was your grandparents, or your grandparents came from Germany?
Yeah, well, some of the grandparents, like my grandmother was a little bitty girl. I mean, she was an infant when she came through Ellis Island. But I can say all my great-grandparents
So
did.
they must have helped settle that church.
Oh, yeah.
They helped found the church.
They gave that church the communion ware, and the name was inscribed on the bottom. They gave it a cross that was a cross and anchor that was on the steeple. And one thing I remember real well, we used to have the traditional old white frame church with the tall steeple that you see for Lutheran. And I helped my grandfather on my mother's side, my grandfather, tear that down. And they built a new church in 1960. And he was also the first funeral in that church. But remembering that when I was 9 years old is a definite memory of tearing that church down. But, yeah, it's the German Lutheran heritage in our family goes way back. Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
well, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Were any of them preachers?
No. And what's so strange about that, I mean, I had this was on my mother's side, I had a uncle, my mother's wife's husband was a preacher, and I've got a first cousin on my mother's side that's a preacher. But you'd think out of all this that there would be preachers who would come out of that, but no, they were, I should say but they were farmers with a very, very strong Lutheran background. You know, it was, you know.
Do you ever go back to that church?
Oh yeah, every once in a while. And it's been a while now. Brings back a lot of memories. You know, the ELCA has gone through a lot of problems, you know, over the past 10 years.
Yeah.
And it had affected that country church. And, you know, that's kind of sad to see.
Like, how many members do you think it had? I mean, how many people would go to church on it? Any idea?
Attendance probably on Sunday, 150 to 200, something like that.
And the town, how big was the town? What was the population?
The town that was 5 miles away. Yeah, I mean, this was definitely a rural church, but the town that I'm associated with, about 3,000.
So 200 people, 150 people at church, that's a lot for a
Well,
small church like that.
And not only
In a small
that,
town.
it was one of, if you can imagine this, in the western part of that county, it was one of 7 Lutheran churches.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Everybody was a Lutheran.
Oh yeah. I mean, you had to go to town to find
A Methodist.
a Roman Catholic or Methodist or Presbyterian. I mean, that just didn't register. You know.
Wow.
To give you an idea, I was from a graduating class of 80 some odd, and I was from a confirmation class of 8, and I believe it was 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 of us graduated from high school together. You know, so we knew each other all the way through.
Yeah.
So,
That's really cool.
yeah, it was. And,
Yeah.
And the other 4 went to a town called Johnson, which was my dad's hometown.
But they were Lutherans.
Oh yeah.
Everybody was a Lutheran.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody was a Lutheran.
Yeah, there was a lot of Lutherans. There really was. Yeah.
What challenges do you think that we need to work on here at this church?
As you know, from the time I've been here, and it continues, is just reaching out and getting new members. And I think it's especially important to find, well, I would say people of all ages, but it's always important to find young families and the younger bunch that can grow with you through the thing. You don't want to build every office and every position in a church based on an older person. You know, it gives the wrong complexion. It really does. And I understand this church, before we got here, and sad to say that it was, because I had a son that had been deeply involved in it, or I probably would have too, but, you know, softball, things like sports and softball and lots of things that people were involved in. And as that population grew older, I think it just kind of fell by the wayside.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that we should reject the older people. I mean, they're the rock of the church, but you need to have a broad age base, you know, and what it means is we need to go out and find new members.
Gotta do it.
Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you. Appreciate you doing this interview with me today.
Yeah, you're very
And
welcome.
we're
I hope
so glad y'all came to this church.
well, we're very glad we did too. We're glad to be here. So.
We're done.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.